Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Singapore International Film Festival's SG Original panel about how do you finance a short film, thinking outside the box. With me are our panelists for today in the studio. There's Tan Wei Ting, she's a filmmaker from Singapore. There's Lee Sangchul, he's a film investor and financier based in Singapore, but also from Korea. And on Zoom with us, Fran Borgia, who's an independent film producer in Singapore, and Lume, who's a filmmaker of short and feature films. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being with us here today. So the topic is for us to discuss today is about how can we think about other ways of financing our films, not just relying on the typical avenues that we are so used to. So I would think that today we are trying to discuss a few things for the benefit of young filmmakers who are finding ways to finance their short films, to understand how they could possibly reach out to commissioners, work with commissioners, and possibly find a more sustainable way of financing all their film projects. So perhaps to start out with the first question, I would address like the two filmmakers, Khan and Wei Ting. Can you share a bit about a brief history about how you began working on commissioned films? And maybe a little, you can also elaborate about how this particular structure has affected your own way of working. Wei Ting, yeah, maybe you start with you.
Wei Ting, go ahead.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. The first film that I directed, Cash, is actually under Temasek 2020. I think it's a platform that sort of commission new filmmakers, sort of as a way to invest in these potential future talents, more of a mentor structure. And then the second film was with MVPC, under 15 shots, where Kirsten passed the project to me, where she helped to produce and got me to direct it. Scott Still Standing. So both, those are the two short films I've made so far. And actually both are, like you said, like commission lah. I think the first one, for Cash, is actually much more free because it's more of a mentorship program. So they don't really like have an agenda that they have to drive at. Sorry, it's really weird looking at myself. Yeah, so as a mentorship program, they have a central theme, and the theme is Beyond 2020, which actually we are in right now. Back then was like 2017 or 2018, and they just wanted to like ask the filmmakers to respond to like how Singapore is like in 2020. So I make a little film about this bunch of cashers revolting against the cashless system, which has taken over their job. Yeah, so for that project, I actually had a lot of creative freedom. And it's a very good, I thought it was a very good risk off my shoulder as a first-time filmmaker to be under this commissioning platform. Because prior to this, I actually did self-fund some films, but I wasn't the one directing. And I thought like, whoa, there's a lot of risk to put my own money on myself, because maybe I trust other people more than myself. So like this, in a sense, takes quite a bit of risk of me to have that amount of budget to play with and just give it a try to see if directing is something that I want to explore. Yeah. Yeah. So with that, I'll just talk about Still Standing also in this framework. That one has a little bit more agenda because it's about the giving spirit of Singaporeans back in the 70s to 90s period. So there's like a very, very fixed framework as compared to like Beyond 2020. You can literally throw any story and give a statement around it. Yeah. So yeah, I think for that one, it's more of how do I find a personal take on it. So I did something that I thought it was not so common, like about architecture, and that like giving is not just like about donations or charity, but like having that giving spirit to an entire generation of like Singaporeans lah. Because the architect, Mr. Tan Ching Siong, he's so passionate about creating a livable space, a breathable space for people to live in. That at his age, he was like 89, and he actually came back from China when he heard about the population-wide paper. So like I thought that was the giving spirit. Yeah. So then like I thought it was more of a personal take. So that allowed me to balance out like my agenda with like the commissioner's agenda, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
And Khan, what about you?
Just to say thanks again for the chance to be on the panel. It would be nice to actually, know the participants, the demographic of who's listening. It's easier to give a tailor-made answer. But, just to answer your question briefly, how did I get started making commission films? For me, it's a bit odd because, to be honest, I never really worked towards making a commission film. I don't think that's something that we do. But I understand the question. I'll just say that so far I've made 4, and then maybe later on we can go into a little bit more detail. But the first one, I was right off the bat, I was very fortunate. I wasn't even really a filmmaker at the time. I just knew that I wanted to make films. And then I participated in this legendary film competition, Fly By Night, the one that was created by Bin Bin and Uni Hadi. And at that film competition, there was someone who saw my short film. I think it was only like a 3-minute short film. And then the following week, he called me and said, I'm one of the key members of the Singapore Optical Trade Association, and I like the film that you made, and I want to commission you to make this short film for our dinner and dance, end of the year dinner and dance, which was really strange to me because I wouldn't consider myself a filmmaker at the time. I was just an enthusiast. I did not win a prize at the Fly By Night. The prize was, I think, $300. But then I got this commission. And when I asked him, what do you want me to do exactly? He said, okay, do a film. We have a budget. I asked him how much. He said 10,000. So it was very strange. It was I asked him so many times, are you very sure you want to commission me? And I even dissuaded him. I said, I think there's better ways to use this 10,000, buy the dinner and dance people some, nice gift. So that was my first experience with commission. And subsequently, I started making my own films. The second commission was by German Embassy in Singapore, and it was the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. So the German Embassy called up a few of us that they heard about. Okay, at that time I was already making films, and I had myself in the newspapers a few times. So what I didn't meet the others the other Singaporean filmmakers that they met, but I heard from the commissioner that there were 3 Singaporean filmmakers they were interviewing. I did not try very hard during the commissioning. I mean, when they were auditioning us. In fact, I was rather relaxed. But at the end of the whole process, they chose me. And I can go into that details about that later on. The third commission was by Asian Film Archive, their 10th anniversary. And then the fourth one was the National Gallery of Singapore, the inauguration event. So in each of these cases, I count myself fortunate. I didn't work towards getting those commissions. In fact, there have been other projects that I tried really hard to get. There have been cases where I tried to get funding from Singapore Film Commission, and all those cases where I tried really hard, I didn't get them. So I hope, those things kind of opens up the discussion.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It seems like both of you started out in like these kind of film competitions, trying to just see whether directing was for you, and after that, it got the attention of commissioners, and it began your career. And so maybe I hop over to Sangchul, who is a commissioner. You are executive producer on films as well. How can you take us through perhaps the mind of a commissioner? How do you spot talent, and where do you spot them, and how does a filmmaker get your interest?
So, to be more technical, I'm not sure we're actually exactly a commissioner, but I mean, we're more of an investor. But I guess commissioning a short film could be a way of investing in a talent. So one thing we can do is when there's a talented filmmaker that we really want to work with and build a relationship, maybe as an investment to that person and that person's potential future project, we can commission a short film with them. So that's one way. And to answer your question about like how we find them or what do we look for, I mean, we do different things. We go to film festivals and we look at short films and feature films and see who are out there. We also sponsor different grants, such as the SGIFF SEA short film grant. They were part of the sponsors. And we're also doing another grant starting this year. So we do that to have access to up-and-coming filmmakers in the region because we have access to all the applicants. Other than that, we just try to read and see as many things as possible. And when there is something we like, we try to contact them.
Do you accept as well, like when filmmakers write to you personally through your like company's email address, or do you more like you prefer to scout them on your own?
I mean, we are open to sort of direct contact from filmmakers. So I mean, we've had cases where people call us up or send us stuff. But when it's like that, I just say that we're more comfortable when there is more of a formal introduction made to us through people we know or we are the ones engaging, like starting the engagement. But we are open to people contacting us directly.
Thank you. Fran, maybe hop over to you. Like as a producer, when you're approaching short filmmaking, what do you think about when it comes to financing? Who are the platforms or the alternative avenues that you look out for or that you approach? And maybe also following up with that, what kind of materials do you prepare to make sure that you're able to execute or secure these kind of propositions that you're making?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Well, I feel it's very organic in the sense of like every year there is different ways of creating short films because there is new adventure or new platforms that open up, So for example, we have the Cine65, we have Big C commissioning short films, we have Objective, sometimes even NAC. So there is, every year there is, depending on like what is the celebration or the kind of like a thing that those organizations or platforms might request, but it's also as well, it's very hard because, you don't approach them, usually they approach you. So it's not really an application, like, which is different to what the Singapore International Film Festival have with this grant for short film. So again, it's really depending of who is requesting or opening up those platforms, or how do you approach them? But I mean, I was happily involved in an initiative that was created by Blue 3 Asian Creative Awards called LEAP, where we spent the full year, this year, kind of nurturing and 6 talented young filmmakers, which we identify. 3 mentors were involved, which is you, Michael, Kang, and myself. We identified 6 filmmakers. We felt that we wanted to give them a chance, an opportunity to work, and that we put some grants together. I mean, Blue 3 Asian Creative Work put some grants together, and they managed to commission short films. And we didn't just wanted to give the money out, but we also wanted to create a little bit of like a workshop or a platform where we worship the short film, which is not very common. So we started pretty much from the development, and we follow up all the way into the post-production. So that was an interesting initiative just created last year. So every year there is a new initiative coming up. So we just need to be attentive of what is opening up. But again, it's true that sometimes they just call to you more than you calling to them. Like what Kang mentioned, that that you just might need to be in the right time or in the right spot. But again, it doesn't mean that you don't have to start. So you have to start. Wanted to make a short film, and something will come out to you. Yeah.
And the second part of the question, Fran, is like, what kind of materials should a young filmmaker prepare to be able to approach these commercials?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it's very different, and it really depending on what are the platforms or where or who you are approaching to, right? I mean, of course, we all start with the script, so that is the initial idea or material that you need. You need to have a script that you are willing to work with, and then again, it's like any of these platforms that might actually open up to you might actually have certain kind of like rules and regulations, and you might need to modify that script. You might need to create a script specific for that kind of platform. But I mean, in my case, I mean, we still prepare, we work, we still try to make short films. We try to do like 2 or 3 short films per year, even if, what we trying to focus in some feature films. But the way we treat the short films is that we treat it the same way that we treat our feature film. We prepare proposals, and we try to get a sponsorship, and we try to get a commission. And if we don't get a commission, depending on how the script, how long we have been sitting on that script, we try to bring it to production if we have the means.
Thank you. So maybe I forgot to say something at the beginning. That if the audience has any questions, feel free to type into the Zoom chat at any time, and then our team here will try to relay the message so we can ask the questions as immediate as possible. So don't hesitate to ask as the Q&As or as the talk is happening. Don't have to save to the very end. So maybe moving on to the next topic about the balance between collaboration and compromise during commissions. Could the directors maybe start with Ting? Could you share a bit more about what is this back and forth like, and do you have any examples about balancing this more like artistic vision versus a certain kind of maybe like, as you said earlier, like agenda or like messaging that has to be involved in the commission work?
Khan, do you want to start first? I might think a bit.
Now I will start. But I think my thoughts about this are also kind of all over the place. I've written some things down, so I'll just bear with me. I'll just go according to what I see. I think, you see, I think a commissioner, when they choose you, as Fran has already alluded to, they know what they're looking for. I think by the time you are in a position of a commissioner, you know what you're looking for, and you have a good guess who can deliver, So I would say that from a filmmaker's point of view, you already have a voice. You already have a distinct way of voice or style in your film, and you've already proven yourself somewhat, because the main risk for a commissioner is that they give you the budget to do something, and when it's time to deliver, you can't deliver, right? So you've already proven that you are a reliable filmmaker. So with all of that, I know I'm not answering your question directly, but for me, it was actually rather straightforward. Take, for example, the German embassy one. I had to deliver on the deliverables. There are many deadlines that were given to me. I never had an issue with that. I remember one thing that the guy said to me at the start was, the reason why he gave it to me, as opposed to the other 2 filmmakers, was I didn't over-promise. So as I told you, when I was sat in front of the interviewer, I wasn't overly anxious. I didn't want it. I wasn't so gian lah. I wasn't so, I wanted it so much. I was very calm and relaxed, and somehow that helped. And therefore, I did not over-promise as well. So I never really had to compromise. And again, maybe I'll end with this. The budget, once you find out the budget that you are given, then you decide on the work that you will deliver. That sounds like Godard. But, like for example, German embassy one, there was no budget. The main so-called budget was that they would fly me to Berlin. There would be a guide there. There would be accommodation, but I wasn't going to be paid. Maybe that's why I didn't really want it lah. But but I had a chance to be in Berlin for, I think it was 9 days, right? All expenses covered. So because of that, that arrangement, I then decided that my so-called artistic approach would be to do a a found object kind of art. Whatever that I could find there, I would capture. I would make sure that I capture it in my camera, and then I would then sculpt the narrative in post. You know, so it was because of what was available to me. Whereas a commission like the Asian Film Archive or even the Singapore Trade Optical Association, they had a big budget. So based on that, I could actually write a proper narrative and find the resources. I mean, the resources from the commission to actually realize that. Again, for me, there was not much compromise. Yeah. What about you, Wei Ting?
What about you, Ting?
It's so good to hear that there's not much compromise on your end. For me, I'm pretty lucky also so far. Both films had very little compromises. I pretty much was able to do more what I want. Maybe more the timeline is very tricky lah, very, very tight sometimes, and that then compromises on the work quality as compared to the commissioner's agenda. But I think being able to manage that is also a skill, a craft, an art, I would say. So I was very lucky because I had very good producers on Still Standing who was able to protect what we wanted to do. But then at the same time, really balance out the agenda lah. I think if you want actual examples, is there any commissioners in the audience? Because I don't know who I'm talking to. Young filmmakers. Okay, so like I think Still Standing, the only part that was a bit of a struggle was the end tag, because it has to be like maybe more bright and like you want to inspire people. Whereas I feel like Still Standing was a bit of a tragedy because like Pearl Bank, as in because it's about Pearl Bank apartments and it did get like torn down. Although like the architect continues to put up a fight. But then like I think the end tag initially it was more about city isolation, like the isolation that is a very different like thematic ending. If you just craft the end tag very differently, like it changes how the audience leave the theater thinking about things. So like one way that I can't remember what was the original end tag, but then like that was the only thing that we gave after a few back and forths. Yeah.
Okay, so it seems like both of you agree that okay, there's some form of adaptation that you all did so that your process was a little more smooth and you didn't have to have so much dispute with your commissioners. But maybe for Khan, following with Wei Ting's response, she did mention like some of the challenges she faced working with commissioners. Do you have any, shall we say, like, apart from creative, but other kind of challenges?
I did have to turn down some commissions lah. They're kind of commissions, but then at the same time, the reason why I turned them down was because they were not really from a professional body, or at least not professional enough. So I think one of the things as a creator, when you go for the pitch session or the so-called audition, you must also be a good listener. You don't go there to just talk, to just like, oh, here's my portfolio, and you just talk and talk. You know, you go there to listen. What are you listening for? You listen for what they want. What does the commissioner want? And then you decide whether you can deliver or not. So this is the other thing about not wanting it too much to the point where you overpromise. So those that I turned down, it was because, you know, like one of it is just, it's not an organization, just a person, you know, saying, oh, could you do this film? You know, I'm going to pay you. But when I listened to the parameters of what is required and everything, I really didn't feel that I was able to deliver, at least not to this person's crazy expectation. So then I turn it down. So maybe that's why I've managed to avoid situations where it becomes overwhelming or, you know, something that I just cannot deliver. It's been quite smooth lah. I mean, if you get commissioned by Singapore organizations, Singaporeans are very organized. So like when I got the commission from National Gallery of Singapore, there were many, many deadlines. But I didn't mind lah. You know, if you're brought up in Singapore schooling, it's nothing shocking. Maybe if you're a foreigner, it's like, hey, can you chill a bit? You know, but for us, it's like homework lah. It's, you know, so I look at all the deadlines, I understand their anxiety. They want to make sure that, you know, all these international guests are going to be there on the opening day. They want to make sure that if at the early stage you're going off course, your work is looking like crap, they can do something about it, you see. So I just made sure that I delivered every time for each deadline.
So Sangchul actually Khan mentioned the question like he's thinking what the commissioner wants, and for you as a financier, what are your usual expectations when you finance a project, and what are some of the elements you look out for to make sure that a project meets your both artistic as well as your your financial indexes?
I think there's a difference when we're investing in a project as a sort of a financial investment, and then also when we're more of a sponsor. So when we're just sponsoring a project, we don't expect any kind of financial gain from it. So as long as the director or the filmmaker is making something that was pitched to us, we don't really get involved in the creative process. I mean, of course, if they want us to get involved in it, we would love to, we're happy to. But, once we decide to make something with them, we let them do their thing. But in return, maybe what we are expecting in that case is we want to build relationship with them organically by being part of their artistic work. And maybe in their future projects, when they move on to features, maybe we can have some opportunity to have a more meaningful working relationship with them at that time. When it's more of a business investment, then we just want to make sure that the project has a realistic business plan, and there is a clear idea on how they plan to make the movie, how to release it, and make the money back. Yeah.
And do you also invest in short films, and what kind of like proposals do you normally receive? Do they also involve business plans for short films?
For short films, actually, no one has come to us with like a direct pitch for a short film yet. So ways we invest in short film would be, being part of the grant, sponsoring a grant. Or if, let's say, a director or a filmmaker has a script, and if we feel like a good way to make the work move forward is to create a short film out of it, then maybe we'll support them make the short film, as sort of like an early investment into the potential feature project.
Proof of concept.
Yeah.
And Fran, I mean, you've read and you've also been part of many, I guess, commissioners' contracts and agreements. Can you share some common articles that filmmakers should look out for, especially those that that you have had dispute or had affects either creative process or distribution process? When a filmmaker receives a contract, how can they navigate this contract?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. So, well, I mean, the first thing to look out is who owns the short film at the end. I mean, who is signing has a copyright. If the film belongs to you because you have been commissioned, but it's sometimes some of these commissions they do have a platform for it, right? But sometimes they stipulate the period of time that they're going to use the film, whether you might be able to sell. To send it to festivals for potential festival screening. So I think that has to be very clear in terms of like who really owns the short film, because by right it should be the filmmakers who own the rights to the films. So that is very important to keep in mind when reading any of these documents. But again, I mean, it's really it really depending, who is drafting those documents. Sometimes, the paper trades it's a 20-page thing. Sometimes maybe 20 pages, but that could be, for me at least, is the most important part.
And can you describe a bit about, usually are there space for negotiation during this time, or does a filmmaker just have to sign whatever is given to them?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a little bit tricky. I mean, again, it's depending of, it's very hard to generalize, to put it that way. I think every institution, every platform, any commissioner has a different kind of rules and regulations. You just need to be able to read every contract and sign it adequately. Again, I mean, I'm facing contracts and agreements every time we do a co-productions for feature films. And sometimes, I mean, they're extremely boring, and but you have to go through it. And again, you know, it's like nothing is going to happen. I mean, you are there trying to make a co-production, trying to make a commissioning film. Everyone has the best intention, you know, but if anything really happened and there is any kind of dispute, you can find faults in the smaller kind of footprint. So that's why it's good to just read it throughout, just to be sure.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe I'll ask Sangchul as well, because as from a financier's perspective, when a filmmaker wants to negotiate contracts with you, what are the points that you usually think about when whether you accept or whether you have to turn down this negotiation?
It's really case by case. So it's hard to say, like, you know, because the deal breaker is different on every case. But what I would say is, I mean, just for both sides, I mean, when you talk contracts, there will be moments or points within the contracts that are very sensitive and might, you know, be uncomfortable to talk about. But I would say that it's better to talk about that before signing the contract. And if there's something that's really uncomfortable to you, I would just walk away. Yeah. I wouldn't, especially for creator side, you know, like Fran mentioned, you know, ownership of the intellectual property. I mean, those are really important points, especially for creators. So if there are any issues like that that are not acceptable or very uncomfortable to you, like either really seek out expert advice or just walk away from it. It's better than to sign something you don't like and suffer later.
Yeah. That's good. So maybe let's move on to the next topic. It's about like career building and creating win-win situations between financiers as well as the filmmakers. Actually, we have a question from the audience. Maybe I will ask maybe first Khan to answer this question from Radhika. So if a young filmmaker finances a film by themselves, very independent, what is the next step they should take to get the film out there?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, let me say that I completely understand and empathize with your question because I was in your shoes, a young filmmaker, or at least wanting to be a filmmaker. And then at the time when I started was early 2000s. And Singapore had gone through a drought of films. We had not made any feature films for a period of maybe 2 decades. But I think my first advice is don't wait for opportunities to come your way. Just be clear about what you want to achieve, and then go ahead, hunker down and do the work. Just do it. I had many failures at the beginning. Failures in this industry is basically people ignore you, lah. You know, you make a film, people ignore you. People don't really care whatever you've made. So initially it was like that. I remember for 3 or 4 years, I sent films to the Singapore Film Festival, and it wasn't accepted. But each year I got better and I got better and I got better, and then eventually I got in, was selected. So I would say the other avenues will open up to you, but as a creator, maybe I would actually love to hear from Wei Ting about this. But for me, as a creator, it's less my role to think about where the avenues could be. Perhaps if I had a producer, that would be their role. But for me, it's to make sure that I fulfill my goal, my own expectation. At that time, my goal was very simple. With the limited budget that I have, I want to tell the most compelling story that I can. So my first film, I could only, unbelievable as it sounds, I only had $300. And so I said, okay, 2 people talking for 90 minutes, the length of a feature film, and make it as compelling as possible. So then that was the film that got me into Singapore Film Festival. And then I was very fortunate to then receive the so-called patronage of the then film programmer Philip Chia, who then became this like a patron for me, because subsequently every film that I made, he would help me show it around to some of the festivals that he was involved in. So I became very spoiled that way. The first 5 years, I was sending out screeners of my films to other festival programmers, but I found that the networks that opened up for me were all people that I met along the way. So therefore, I couldn't have strategized any of it. That's why my advice would be, know what is it that you want, hunker down and do the work, and don't worry about where will be the next opportunity, or where's the avenues that other than film festivals. Because as I shared, even my commission projects, it came out from me doing the work, and then eventually all these doors kind of opened. And just to end on this point, which is that eventually I found my way into teaching, and it's something that I love a lot. But when I started out, it wasn't my goal. It was just something like I was aiming, the old expression, you aim for the stars, and then you kind of miss it, you hit the moon. And for me, I'm so happy on the moon, because when I started out, I had this overreaching goal. I think many young filmmakers have that too. Oh, I want to win the Oscar for Singapore, and then you discover that either you don't have the ability, you don't have the resources. But then I found teaching, and then I found that I had a passion for it. I found that I was good in it. Yeah. I hope that satisfies your question.
Yeah, so kind. You threw the thing to waiting. So what was your experience like trying to get attention after you've made a film? What do you try to do?
I totally agree with Khan in terms of doing the work. As in, I feel like it was never like where do I want to get to, but like, oh shit, I want to tell this story. Like, how am I going to tell this story? Like, whatever avenue lah, like whether it's being commissioned or you find your own thing. But like at the end of the day, to me, it's about the craft and about like getting better at telling stories. Like, of course, you have ups and downs. You'll feel yourself in terms of like your expectation of yourself, how well it reaches the audience the way that you intended it to be. And yeah, you just have to keep building that. Yeah. And with regards to, sorry, the question was,
what are the next steps that filmmakers can take apart from just festivals? Like, what are the other avenues?
So actually, I was very lucky in the sense of like the films that I was doing was commissioned, and in that way, it actually has like the entities, the organizations already have like a marketing plan, like distribution plan, and all that set in place with you. I mean, that's beyond like festival routes, but it has a certain outreach. It has like online outreach, engagements, ad buys, and stuff like that. So the film do get out. Just then, for me, the festival part is always self-distribution so far, or like with a producer friend, kind of thing. Yeah. So the distribution thing is effort lah. Like 1 year round, you do it every month kind of thing. Like I think most filmmakers who have done any film of theirs will understand this process. Yeah. So in terms of outreach, I think it's not really about like how do you get people to like appreciate your film, but if you do a good film, or like at least something that you feel like some people will like, then the people will come or like will appreciate lah, I feel. Yeah. And then with regards to like, okay, never mind. Continue.
Okay, so maybe like Fran, can you also share a bit more about like your strategy when you were when you were producing shots from directors who at that time they didn't have their own branding, didn't have their own like they were not famous or they have not made films before. What were some of the strategies that you took as a producer to try and get their visibility beyond just, I guess, film festivals, but what is after that?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Well, I mean, I guess it's I mean, I think, you know, since they are commissioned shorts, they already have a kind of like a starting point. There's a starting point there. And then, of course, you know, the film festival life is like, you know, it's what we expect them to kind of like do better, because it really will expose us and will help us to grow as filmmakers, and maybe help us to do the next step, which is naturally the feature film. So that's why we kind of positioning ourselves that, you know, every short film we wanted to send it as wide as possible, show it to as many people as we could, and then try to get it into festivals, so it could help us in a little way that can to do the feature film. In terms of selling short films, it's very hard. You know, it's really very hard. We have never done any sale, or minimals, maybe a couple of them, and we have produced over 30 short films. You know, so again, you know, the goal of short films is really not to sell it. I mean, it's already hard to sell a feature film. But there is some channel, there is some organizations that they buy, but I think that could be, or at least in my opinion, should be secondary. I think the short film is like the step for you to build your career towards the feature film.
There's a follow-up question. Maybe Sangchul, you can answer this question from Chuang Nong. The question was originally like how to turn down a co-production offer without damaging future opportunities. But maybe the question is, when, you know, is it offensive to a financier when you get a no's, and does this burn bridges in your opinion?
No, we get no's all the time. I think saying no is fine.
It's a misconception that we're burning a bridge, actually.
At least for us, I mean, someone saying no to us is not a problem. I think maybe how they say the no, you know, is more important. But as long as it's nice, we're fine with it.
Yes, okay. So maybe we continue on with the topic at hand, which is like career building. Yeah, Fran, can you share a bit more about how commission works play a part in like the directors you work with in their careers, balancing like independent work but also this commission works? Have they also improved or changed or developed these directors' careers as well? And has there been any impact as well in your company as well?
Well, I mean, again, really depending of what are the short films, and then who are the commissioners, who are the filmmakers. Again, the understanding, and I think this is all filmmakers and all the short films we have made, the understanding is that we see has a step toward the bigger goal. So that is always very clear in our mind. But of course, you know, some commissioners' work are just commissioners' work. You know, we have to also battle it out to make sure that we are delivering the best possible short film in that aspect. But I mean, in terms of like looking back, you know, the 15 years I have been doing producing films and making, you know, around 30 short films. Now we have 10 feature films. It helped. It helped. It helped. I mean, I started being a producer of short films, being the producer, the AD, and the editor. I needed to do everything because we never had enough money, right? And that kind of like was how 4 years after making short films, we moved on to our first feature film, which is called Here. And I took out the same roles because we didn't have enough money to make feature films with the budget that we needed. You know? And again, that film, you know, we premiered in Cannes, and in a way opened some doors. And so what I'm trying to say is that, you know, every short film you need to strategize. You need to really see how is it coming, what would will make you, and then what is the next step. At the same time, I mean, you need to be careful because you get too comfortable making commissioning short films. You might not want to take the next step. So I think it's case by case.
And following up on that, Karen, how would you give advice to a young filmmaker on this idea of portfolio making and career building?
Okay, I think I will relate it back to what's going on right now. The way I see it is like this. This interesting thing has happened, right, in 2020, where everyone is in lockdown, at least where I am. I'm not sure about Singapore, but you know, more or less around the world, it feels like history has drawn a line in the sand. and there is, you know, before this global pandemic, and then there's after. And I feel like during this time, this year, people are forced into accepting virtual classrooms, virtual meetings, and of course, virtually watching films. If you were not a Netflix subscriber before, you know, or something along those lines, right? Those kind of online subscriptions, you would be now, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that you can't plan for these things. I don't think anybody can foresee what's going to happen in the future. When I started, there was no YouTube. So we don't wait for these kind of things to happen, for technologies to develop, and then you decide, I'm going to make a film that fits this platform. You make, you have a very clear goal in mind, as I said just now. You make the work, you improve on it as much as you can, and then you find yourself being at the right place at the right time with these new technologies, and a commissioner or a patron or someone who is part of this network says to you that, I like what you're doing, I would like you to be part of this. That's how it happens. I just saw Juan's question about you know, people who've been making these online videos, and they want to go to feature film. And I don't really have the answer to that, but being in Malaysia, I know that there have been a few. Namwi is a very famous Malaysian YouTuber who has gone on to successfully make feature films, or at least 2 feature films, box office hit and everything. But you know, a lot of these YouTubers in Malaysia that have been successful, they did not strategize it that way. They simply they were already in the media somehow. They were already on radio or television, and they already had all these networks of actors and friends. And then when the platform came along, when YouTube came along, they simply shifted very slightly. It wasn't a 180-degree shift for them. In many cases, it was just a small shift for them to develop themselves to be online ready, you know. And then history will just keep repeating itself. So as unspectacular as that answer is, I would say that know what you want to achieve, and then just do the work, and then be nimble enough to make changes and adjustments when the technology or the platforms change.
Maybe Waiting, you can help come answer Juan's question also. So to read it out, Juan, you asked, what does the panel think about filmmakers who are making more online narrative videos instead of just festival short films? And I guess Waiting, you can answer this first part, second part. What advice will you give to them if they want to find a producer for feature projects? Yeah, wow, tough question.
How do I answer that? Actually, I have a question also, but for Fran, but then I scared I forget, so I just say first, later then can answer. But Fran just like mentioned about when filmmakers get too comfortable making commission short films and that they might not take the next step. I wanted to clarify what do you mean. Yeah, but then about portfolio building, I don't think I can really, or the online narrative thing, because I don't do it, so it's a bit hard for me to give any comments, or finding a producer for a feature also. Yeah.
So maybe Fran, you can answer Waiting's question first. Like, what do you mean about these cushy positions, I guess?
No problem. Thank you, Waiting. So, well, I mean, it's depending on the goal that you have as a filmmaker. I mean, for me, the personal goal, and that's why I make short films, is because they are the initial step for a feature film. And it's not that I disregard short films, okay? I mean, I read short novels and I read stories, and then sometimes more interesting than reading a whole book. But what I'm trying to say is that the understanding of how people, the audience, even as filmmakers, the understanding of short film, something that is 30 minutes, below 30 minutes, even below 59 minutes, which is considered short film, right? It doesn't have the same, it's not as powerful a powerful tool as if you have a feature film, which is just something that is 60 minutes and above, because once you have a feature film, there is a whole lot of platform everywhere that you are able to move that feature film, meaning from festival, from distribution, from getting the people watch the story that you are trying to tell. And that's why you made the feature film. So that's why, for me, short film is a platform, it's a step. And that's why it's good not to get too comfortable, because once you get too comfortable making short films, if your goal is to make a feature film, you might not want to take the step. Yeah. That is a personal view.
Maybe going back to John's question, maybe Sangchul is good for you also to share, like, as an investor yourself, have you been noticing the, I guess, increased amount of online kind of films? And do you feel like these kind of filmmakers translate to like more like festival films? And are you taking note of these kind of directors as well?
But when you say online films, like, what do you, because like I feel like everything's online films nowadays.
Maybe it's a good question that Joy, maybe could you like type into this group chat ASAP? Like, can you clarify what are online films? I'm just guessing it's like maybe like
best
content.
person to answer Joan's question is Joan himself.
Is he already have an answer?
Okay, yeah, John says that can't answer this question, so maybe it's okay. But I guess online films could be things that are maybe like short YouTube things, like just like episodic videos, or like, are you taking note of these kind of filmmakers?
Yes, I mean we look at them too. We don't sort of categorize people into, you know, narrow fields, and we only look at one field. We don't do that, because I think those sort of different platforms and formats are merging anyways. So I feel like people can do all different genres or types of storytelling, visual storytelling. So you know, in that sense, we're not just interested in investing in feature films. I mean, most of our investment actually are TV series. We also are interested in feature films. I mean, we may be interested in investing in, let's say, like more of a short form online series, if there is a potential for it and right business plan for it. So we don't sort of limit ourselves to types, and because of that, we also look at all types of creators out there.
And maybe the next question is for everybody. Like, chime in whenever you can. So the topic is like thinking outside the box when you're trying to finance your short films. Apart from commissioners, I guess, like apart from just looking for, what are other ways in which you have thought about financing your own short film as well, that is maybe unconventional or that's not the government route?
Okay, so I feel like, first of all, right, like commissioners are great. Like, I feel like it's not easy to find money to make something that you care about, but maybe nobody care about yet until it's made. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, I feel like they do have their own agenda, and there's a reason for that agenda, and then there's also a reason that you're receiving that grant, and so like to find your personal voice through, you know, then that creates a nice framework for you to work from. And then on top of that, they handle like distribution and stuff like that. They get your work out. It is a very comfortable. That's why I thought I misinterpreted Fran's earlier, what he said, right, getting comfortable doing commission shot. For me, I took it that way because it was a bit comfortable. Like, as compared to like previously coming out of school and like having no work and then self-funding things. But then I feel like other sources of funding, like, okay, so now after the first two commission work, I feel like commission is very good because like it creates a framework for you, but then how you respond to it, I think like Kyle will probably like understand how you respond to that framework will probably have to be personal enough for you to put your heart into it and for your work to feel sincere to the audience. And that is the creative part lah. of working within that box. But then like now I'm trying to make a film because that probably doesn't fall into the framework of any of these commissioning bodies so far. But then it's a film that I've been wanting to make. I think it's great if you happen to fall in. Then it's like, wow, everything's settled lah. Like you can do what you want. Then like, but then you also like, you know, fulfill their agenda and help them push their agenda. Then like, wow, very good lah. But then like, wow, when I'm trying to get this off the ground, like that is totally not commissioned, and probably nobody want to fund this like 27 minutes film that I'm trying to make. Then wow, very challenging, really very challenging. Still trying to find enough so that everyone not gonna die, like, and like, you know, put in your own money and stuff like that. Yeah, because it's a bit unsustainable like in the long run. Yeah, but then like even having portfolio of works, like still like the money do come from the same few sources, and then like if it's not commissioned, it is a bit trying. Yeah, I have to say. Oh yeah, so like sorry. So like a small plug. So Cindy, you know, the film blog, they're doing like a episodic fun thing called Fun Hour, like FUND hour, and then they are trying to make it like a talk show, like, you know, to get people interested in filmmakers and filmmaking, and then but then at the end of the day, it's like a crowdsourcing sort of like format. Yeah. So then like the next film that I'm gonna make is called Love at 50. And it will be on the pilot episode for Fun Hour to try to raise more funds. So in reply to your alternative ways, that is one that just came about. Yeah.
Anyone else, or anyone else have experience with crowdfunding that you can share? No. Or maybe Sangchul, you can share more about what C47's next, maybe first like missions, goals, what are your next opportunities coming open?
You know, we're always looking for new projects to invest in. We don't know what that's going to be, especially with COVID-19. It's been very, very sort of uncertain and scary. But we are still continuing to look for new projects. So I'm always sort of waiting to meet new people and new creators to hopefully create a new working relationship with them. So, I mean, I guess what I want to say is I'm sitting here pretending to be an expert, which I'm really not. And someone asked a question about like, do we get offended by someone telling us no? No, we don't get offended because we are a new company. We're also a new player in Southeast Asia because, you know, most of our work has been in Korea. So we're here learning, trying to make something out of ourselves too. So if you have an idea and you feel like C47 could be an interesting partner for your project, feel free to contact us and, you know, let's just have a conversation. Maybe you'll say no to us, maybe we'll say no to you, maybe nothing ever happens from it, but at least let's have a conversation.
There's a question again from the chat room from Naman. Hi Naman. Fran mentioned that it's difficult to sell short films. Is there any way at all to monetize shorts, or are they just calling cards for future film career? Maybe Fran, you can answer, follow up from your past point.
Well, thanks for the question, man. Well, I mean, it's hard to monetize feature films, which we spend quite a bit more money into it. So monetizing short films, it's a matter of luck, you know. I mean, we have a couple of short films that, you know, we won some prizes, some TV station bought it. And you suddenly make more than what you spend, you know, and then you say, wow, you know, it's like winning the lottery, you know, but I don't like to play lottery, you know, so I kind of go into every project knowing that I'm going to lose money, and at least I don't feel stupid, you know, because I lose money all the time, especially doing short films, you know. Feature films, they also happen, but I try to play a different role there. So.
Maybe waiting out, Khan, did you have any experience monetizing your shorts before?
I had one bad experience with one of our TV stations where I was very happy because I just started out, and they purchased my first film, and just to be shown on television, I was so happy. So they paid for it. But then when I look back on it, the terms were, when I kind of matured in my understanding of these kind of contracts, I realized that the terms were very unfavorable. But you know, for me at the time, it was exposure. So no, I don't. Other than that, yeah.
So like cash, actually, with the budget that we had to try to pay everyone, and then me, which is co-writer, director, and editor, co-editor, my co-writer Zoe and my producer Ying Tong were not paid for cash. And when the film started to travel, we actually made a little bit lah. Like definitely not to like cover, like really not to cover. But then end up we all were like paid lah. Like like, and it's like every month I will text them like, hey, suddenly got like $200 from this organization. I'll transfer your all 66.666. You know, that kind of thing. Like so it's like we split everything three way. One when we got all the distribution money from either like Air Canada, they were screening our short film on their airplane. I don't know why, but then like yeah, all these little things are like, or like objective school screening, like festivals overseas. Some had screening fees, then they paid us, and all in all, I think we got like about 2K ish, yeah, where we split three ways like, and now sometimes there's still a bit of money coming in, like random few dollars, that kind of thing. Yeah, so that was like a very interesting experience because like previously we have never ever like got anything from short film, but definitely not sustainable. I think for the long run is creating these works like this, maybe get a bit of attention in terms of your craft of storytelling, and then maybe clients will want to get you to tell a story for them, and then from there, you know, I'm sure like Fran will understand all this, like getting corporate jobs or like work from commercials, and then like in order to like survive otherwise. I think it is the same format as a freelancer or a freelance director, doing works that you're passionate about, like making it good, and you know, maybe someone with funding will ask you to be hired as a director or a filmmaker to create something. Yeah, I think that's how it's more sustainable, not in terms of monetizing within that short film itself. Yeah.
So the audience has another question. Thanks for submitting. By Manush. Manush asks, do you have any advice for first-time filmmakers to make a short out of a feature script and use it to gain confidence from producers? And how open are producers for such initiatives? And to work with newcomers in making a short and turning it into a feature they believe that is good enough. Is this a common practice to adapt, or to make a short out of a feature film? Has anyone have you done this before, or Fran?
Can I answer the first part of the question?
Yes, you may.
Okay, I have a lot of enthusiasm towards first-time filmmakers, not only because I'm a teacher, but I still feel like I'm a first-time filmmaker in many ways. You have to be somewhat, you have to be passionate, that's a given. You have to be somewhat crazy in the sense that you have to go down this path that's seldom supported and risky. I just go to the nuts and bolts of what I did, okay, and see if you're crazy enough to take the advice, or if not, you find some other way. For me, I always took my 1 month salary. So I had a job, and then I took my 1 month salary, sometimes 1.5 months, and then I make a film, the best film I can with that amount. I make sure that I pay my actors very well. For me, again, a very unique case, I am my only crew. I shoot, I do the sound, I do the post-production, you know, so it's only me and the actors on location. I try to find locations that are free, or if I had to pay, you know, not too much. So everything has to fit in within my month or month and a half salary. And I found out subsequently, in fact, the amount that I pay my actors is more than Jack Neo, FYI. Anyway, So then I don't, and okay, and here's the other thing. I feel that in many ways, filmmakers are like, or content creators are like white blood cells. You know, white blood cells, they go and attack the bacteria and the virus in the body. You know, they try to restore balance and order in the body. And therefore, see, I'm trying to say so much in this short time. I recently read a quote from George Lucas. He said something along the lines of, it's relatively easy to learn to make a film. What's difficult is knowing what you want to say. So this whole thing about what you want to say is very, very important. You can have the budget to make a technically amazing, professional looking film, but if you don't know what to say, then it's going to disappear. So, and you can make a film that's technically, you know, very rough, but what you want to say is so pressing that people want to program it, people want to watch it, you know. So I've fallen in that end of the spectrum more because I never had the budget to make something, you know, very, very professional looking. So my advice to you is constantly challenge yourself. That's how you know what you want to say. Like I brought up just now at the beginning, when I first started wanting to be a filmmaker, my observation was that there were no Singapore films being made. So the thing I wanted to say was that it's possible to make a film, a compelling story for next to nothing. Now you can question me about that and say, you shouldn't have said that. But whatever it is, that was what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that you can tell a compelling story with next to nothing. So then that became the film. Subsequently, people started making films. And Singapore Film Festival had this section, Singapore Panorama, because there were so many Singaporean filmmakers making films. So that was no longer what I needed to say. It was over. People are making films, a lot of bad films, a lot of good films, a lot of in-between films. So then I had to look for the next thing that I wanted to attack or I wanted to say. So, you know, the final thing is, it's like the zeitgeist, if you understand the spirit of the times. The final thing I want to say is, it's like right now, politically in America, right? People are so divided, right? People are like for Trump, against Trump. That is, as cynical as this sounds, that is great material for content creation because you feel yourself so polarized that you want to say something. So again, like white blood cells, you're rushing in to fill the gap. And I agree with what Sangchul said just now, that you don't box yourself to say that I want to be a feature filmmaker. Why? Why would you do that? Nowadays, there are people who make TikTok 15-second full-time. There are people who make 1-minute YouTube videos, you know. The next generation will not have this idea that feature films have to be 90 minutes, right? They may grow up with this concept that anything more than 5 minutes is a long video and I don't want to watch it. And you may end up having a career making 5-minute YouTube videos, you know. So I don't see a need to any longer to box ourselves to say that content has to be this, exhibition has to be this way. You find what is it that you want to say, and then you find the best way to say it.
Fran, do you have any considerations to share with Manush about, also following up on Khan's response, about making a short from a feature in order to, you know, get it made into a feature? What's your thought about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's. I would say if you had a chance to make a feature, a short film, sorry, you shouldn't really do anything that is coming down from the feature film because each of them has a different kind of like format, different kind of like structure, you know. So you're trying to kind of like make a very independent short film just to impress some producers with the same story to make it into a feature film. I would prefer that, you know, that you're saying, or that you have a dialogue and just explain your story as a feature film, you know. And if you're going to do a short film, just do a short film that you think that is what you're going to do, that it works as a short film itself, you know. Again, structurally, they're very different, you know, and both of them, their end goals at the same time. So, you know, it's like you don't have to make a short film that is pretending to be a feature film in that sense. Yeah.
And Sangchul, Tai asked you directly, do you work with, or do you also look for projects that are not just Singaporean, but also Southeast Asian? And what's the scope of your company's investment portfolio?
We are open to Southeast Asian projects, so not limited to Singapore. In fact, the last film project we invested in was an Indonesian film. So our scope of investment regionally is the entire Southeast Asia. Of course, like I'm based in Singapore and we've done an investment in Indonesia, so we're a little bit more, I don't know, comfortable in those two countries, but it doesn't limit us from other parts of Southeast Asia.
And how do you meet these Southeast Asian filmmakers?
For example, the Indonesian film we invested in, I met other investors in the film project through the producers network at SGIFF in 2018. So participating in that program, I met them organically, and then I maintained contact with them, and through them the opportunity to invest came.
Okay, cool. Actually, Olivia has a question to follow up about your earlier point quite a while ago. You mentioned about when you're working with commissioners, you hit a lot of deadlines. She would like to ask you, what are usually involved in these deadlines, and how are involved are commissioners in giving creative feedback?
Thanks for the question. It's according to the production workflow itself. So usually, the first few deadlines will be about the concept, the treatment, the script. If it's a lot of deadlines, yeah, maybe they might break it up, before maybe halfway through the script, the final script, and then after that, delivery of, it depends. Maybe delivery of the schedule, delivery of the rough cut. Yeah. So if you're familiar with the production workflow, that is the deliverables. They follow that process of deliverables. How involved are the commissioners? My experience is that commissioners want you to succeed. If you've already been chosen by them, they want you to succeed. They're not out to get you. They're not out to try and see you fail, So the only thing is that if you give them cause for alarm, so if you are falling back on the deadlines, or you are, as I think it was Sangchul who mentioned, you're delivering something that's different from what you pitched, only then I think they start to get anxious and they start to control a little bit more. And then you have to understand that you have to, if your commissioner is getting anxious, don't get defensive, try and figure out why. And it's usually one of those reasons. You're falling back on your deadline. You look like you're giving them reason to not trust you, not being able to deliver, or you are changing your original pitch. But other than that, usually there isn't an issue, because the commissioner wants you to succeed. And therefore, you need to have confidence in yourself. You need to have confidence in your own ability to finish and deliver the project. I hope that answers your question.
Ting, what is your experience like?
I think like with a commissioner is also a working relationship. So like, as like also say like you work with a DP, you work with an editor, anything is a working relationship. And the best kind is to be sincere. And I mean, a lot of times filmmakers maybe come with their own agenda, like they have their own story that they want to tell. And like, I don't know, I just feel like if you are sincere about it, and you understand each other's point of view, that usually works out better. And like that trust lah. But then I feel like the hard part for me lah, maybe not for other people, is that for me the filmmaking creative process is a little bit more less assuring. Like along the way you meander. So like sometimes you pitch something, But then as you go draft to draft to draft, you yourself are making discoveries. You are trying to make the story better. But then that might be different from like what you initially pitched. So that creative freedom and like how much control and how much trust then is important to like navigate and that pull and push with the commissioner. I think that's important. Because sometimes like you can go in and pitch something, but then you feel like, oh, I can make this story better in this way. But then like, oh shit, they already approved this draft. Then what am I going to do on set? I found that, okay, like, I want to improve my actor. Then how? You know, things like that. Like, and then like you show them a cut, they're like, wow, like very differently. But then maybe it's better to you and you hope to give a better film to them also. And, you know, yeah, so it's like, I think that one is more tricky. Yeah. So trust, I think. Even platforms like, yeah.
Just add on to that, I think trust is really important. And I think the best way to build trust is having an open, honest conversation. So, yeah, definitely during the creative process, the scope of project might change. Then, you know, share that with the commissioner or financier and talk it over. I mean, maybe the answer you get might not be the answer you want, but at least you've told them about it and they're informed and they know what's going on. I think when you know, people like us get really sort of nervous is no one's telling us anything and we have to chase them for information and things seem to keep changing. That's when we get nervous. That's when we start to, you know, want to get involved and maybe, you know, bridges start to burn.
So like communication is the key, like frequent communication between. And I think the very last question, thanks everyone so much for overrunning with us. The last question for Sangchul from Trivita. She just wants to know, like, what was the name of the recent Indonesian film that you worked on, if you can say?
The title is Arlie and Ratu Ratu Queens.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Who's the director? Are you allowed to mention?
Sorry, I'm blanking on the director's name right now.
No problem, no problem. Yes, I had to put it on the spot. So thank you everyone for tuning in with us, with our fellow panelists, and thanks so much for contributing your time and your stories with our audience. Yeah, so I think that's a wrap for now. I'm not sure how I should close this, but thank you so much everyone for being with us tonight, and hope you continue to enjoy the other programs, other panels and other parts of the festival online and in physical screenings. And otherwise, good night and see you around the festival.
Thank you.